Last semester, we looked at secret societies and eschatology, secret history. This semester, we're doing game theory. In this class, I want to connect the two and show you how the world works. Okay? So first thing I want to do is go over some popular conspiracy theories about how the world works. And there are different variations, so I'll just go over a very simplified, clear version. Okay? And remember, if there's anything you don't understand, ask a question and make sure you are clear. Okay, so we start with the Knights Templars. Knights Templars is probably the most successful secret society in the world. It was founded in the year 1118 as part of the Crusades. So there were Christian pilgrims who went to Jerusalem. Along the way, they would get robbed. So Knights Templars was a volunteer organization designated by the Vatican to protect these pilgrims. And over time, what happened was that the Knights Templars became a bank as well, where you could deposit your gold with the Knights Templars, and they would give you a receipt, and when you went to Jerusalem, they would give you the gold back, okay? So they became a bank, and over time, they became an extremely powerful organization because they were convergence of politics, military, religion, and finance. And that's why in 1314, the Catholic Church and the King of France made them illegal, okay? They burned their leader, Jacques de Molay, at the stake and accused him of blasphemy for worshiping a false god named Baphomet. So the Knights Templars were in Jerusalem, and Jerusalem was convergence of all religions. So they started to become curious about different religions and started to engage in Hermetic philosophy, Neoplatonism, Gnostic philosophy, which were all considered heretical by the Catholic Church, okay? So this was a banned organization. And then what happened was that people speculate that rather than disappear, the Knights Templars re-emerged as the Scottish Rite Freemasons. And why they're important is that they would go on to create the Protestant Revolution, the Protestant Reformation, as well as the Standard Revolution. They conspired to create the American Revolution, as well as the French Revolution. Basically, they create modernity itself. They came to control England and create the Bank of England, which created the modern financial system of today. Then they went on to create World War I, which led to World War II, and now they're conspiring to create World War III, which would then usher in a new world government, okay? A one world government based in Jerusalem, and it will be controlled by an AI surveillance state. And that's why we're seeing data centers being built all around the world, okay? People also speculate that the Knights Templars were able to continue because they had access to secrets. Basically how to communicate with demons, okay? Interdimensional demons. Or Lucifer. And to communicate with demons, you have to make contracts with them through ritual sacrifice. And then what they do is they can take possession of you and offer you secrets. For example, how to live forever, or how to be young forever, or how to build great technology. Okay? They can also tell you how to build nuclear weapons. And so people speculate that the entire point of the one world government and the AI surveillance state is to bring into our world these interdimensional beings so that the elite can live forever. So they can combine with the elite. There are also people who speculate that the Knights Templars go all the way back to Rome and the 13 families, which then became part of Venice. Okay? So there are many different permutations to this conspiracy theory about how the world works. Now, there are lots and lots of issues with this conspiracy theory about how the world works. Okay? First of all, there's absolutely no evidence that any of this is true. We don't know if demons actually exist. There's absolutely no evidence that demons exist. There's no evidence that this is a giant conspiracy that stretched back, 1,000 years. Okay? Second thing is, the elite don't know that this is true. Okay? The people believe this is true, but if you actually go talk to people who have real power, they think this is complete and utter nonsense. Okay? And the third thing about this is that it's anti-historical, meaning that it is a very simplified version of how things work. It doesn't take into account other factors as well. Also, what we learn in this class is game theory. And this is also anti-game theory. Because one thing that you learn in this class is that when people are in power, they become arrogant, hubris. They become stupid. So it's very common for powerful people to rise and then have a spectacular fall, okay? That's just the iron law of history. So for these reasons, we know this theory is not true. At the same time, there are certain things about this theory that are very compelling, okay? So let's go over some of them. Well, the first thing about this theory that's compelling is that it is very intuitive. What intuitive just means is that if I tell it to someone, it makes sense to that person. It makes a lot more sense than the history that we're taught in school. That's kind of strange, right? None of this is correct, but it's intuitive. Second of all, is that it's explanatory. In that even though this is not factual, it does help us understand how the world works. It's a very clear explanation. The third thing that is the most paradoxical is that it is predictive. Meaning, it helps us predict how things will turn out in the future. And so even though the elite think this is all insane and there's no way they're plotting to create World War III, there's absolutely no way that they're trying to create an AI surveillance state and create a one world government, chances are these things will happen. Okay? So this creates a huge paradox. How is it that this is not factual, okay? This is not at all factual, but it is truthful. Meaning it gives us tremendous insight into how the world works. All right? So this is a paradox. This is all nonsense, but it helps us predict the future. So it's truthful.
Let's pause right here, because what Professor Jiang just laid out is the ultimate key to understanding the modern matrix. He's telling us to stop looking at global power as a literal movie-like conspiracy and start looking at it through raw game theory. Think about it. The tech billionaires running Silicon Valley today don't need to belong to an ancient secret brotherhood to act exactly like them. When a small group of people become entirely obsessed with total order, power, and human control, they naturally follow the exact same predictable blueprint. They build databases, they track your data, and they push for massive centralized systems because their psychology forces them to. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's an iron law of human behavior. The players change, but the endgame stays exactly the same. Let's keep watching.
So what I'm going to do now is try to explain to you how the system really works, okay? So the main thing you need to understand is that this is metaphorical. Metaphorical. It is not literal. Okay? So what I'm going to try to do now is try to factually explain to you how the world works, okay? And what you will see is that this is a metaphorical explanation for how the world works. It's a good story that people can understand and help them appreciate the nuance of this world. But now I'm going to tell you how it works literally, okay? All right, so the first thing I'm going to explain to you is that there are people in this world, they're mystics, they're occultists. And they spend all their time trying to figure out how the universe works, okay? They're trying to uncover the secrets of the universe. And there are different secrets, right? There's astrology, okay? The movement of stars can determine people's fate, okay? The idea of astrology. Then you have alchemy, how to turn nothing into gold, how to turn lead into gold. Then you have eschatology. Eschatology is how the world will end. What's the point of the universe? When will God come to the earth, okay? Then you have sacred geometry. Think of sacred geometry as like particle physics, which is the underlying essence of the universe, okay? So occultists, and these could be poets, philosophers, mystics, they spend all their time thinking about what is the fundamental truth of the universe. And then there are people, okay, who seek power, wealth, and fame. All right? And what they recognize is that if they really want to seek power, wealth, and fame, they need to know these secrets as well. So what happens is that they form secret societies in order to access these secrets of astrology, alchemy, eschatology, and sacred geometry, and then implement it in the world in order to create power, wealth, and influence for themselves. Okay, does that make sense? The thing to understand is that there are many different occultists, many different secret societies, and this all creates very different combinations. Okay, but they're all trying to do the same thing, which is trying to achieve an eschatology. All right? The third element is that you need certain individuals in order to propel society forward, in order to achieve the eschatology of the secret societies, okay? And these people are like agents that the secret societies sponsor. And historically, these people included Julius Caesar, Napoleon, Hitler, Stalin. Today we have Trump and Putin. Okay? All right? So these are agents or maybe messianic figures or even scapegoats that secret societies promote in order to push forward a particular agenda. All right? And remember that it looks simple, but it's not, because there are different occultists with different ideas, and then there are different secret societies who are competing against each other, and they're promoting different individuals in order to achieve their particular vision. All right? What drives these individuals like Julius Caesar, Napoleon, Hitler, Stalin, Trump, and Putin is that they themselves believe that they're the real sons of God. Okay? They're the true Messiah who's going to lead the world forward. And the secret societies, these occultists, are just useful idiots. Okay? So this is one framework for understanding the movement of history. All right. So now I'm going to go much more specific. Okay? All right. So there's another way to frame this, which is to say that in the world, in society, there are different groupings, okay? So think of politics. Think of finance, science, religion, military. Okay? Now, the thing about each of these different fields or disciplines is that you have a diversity, a range of behavior with different belief systems. Okay? So each of these different disciplines have their own diverse fields of belief. at a particular point, there's a convergence amongst these different fields. Okay? What makes them converge is the fact that in each field, you have certain individuals, an extreme minority, who seek power, order, and control. Okay? So again, in each field, you're going to have a range. And on one extreme version are those who hate power, but on the other extreme version are those who love power. Okay? And people who love power, order, and control of all these different fields are going to come together, and they're going to work together in order to achieve power, order, control, and we call these people secret societies. Okay? Because they're bounded by a similar interest. Now, what's really interesting is that over time, as society becomes much more larger, these different fields expand in size, creating greater diversity. And what happens is that this convergence becomes much stronger in society. And the reason why is that these different fields are not able to coordinate together, but the people inside this convergence are able to coordinate together, which gives them a huge advantage in society. Okay? Which means that they're able to achieve power, order, and control much more likely. Okay? So what's interesting is that as society declines, because it's become much more bureaucratic, much too large, much too corrupt, these secret societies, in fact, become much more powerful over time because they're able to stay much more cohesive. Okay? Now, once these secret societies are formed, what you'll discover is that there are a huge number of these different secret societies. Okay? And a different individual can join different secret societies. And these secret societies can come from the fact that they went to a certain school, or they grew up in a certain religion, or their families. Okay? There's different combinations. And these secret societies are in competition with each other. And so the criteria for the competition are three things. Okay? Legitimacy, authority, and unity, cohesion. Okay? Why are you more legitimate than other secret societies? Why do you have more authority, expertise than other secret societies? Why are you much more unified than other secret societies? Okay? To solve this problem, what the secret societies will do is they will go back in time and reimagine history to show that they are connected with the entirety of history. Okay? So what they'll say is, okay, well, we got to start not today in our school, but because we're connected to the Freemasons, or they're connected to the Knights Templars, okay? So they go back and create a cosmology that explains their origins. And obviously, the further you go back in time, the more legitimate, the more authoritative you are. Does that make sense? All right, so they're going to go back and they're going to create their own history, and that's why people think that they stretch all the way back to Rome. Okay, or maybe Babylon. And what allows for people to believe that this is continuous is the fact that the elites in each particular time behave the same way, which is they're all seeking power, order, and control. And those who win out have three particular characteristics, okay? First of all, these are people who are addicted to power. They obsess about it. They're obsessive about it. They will do everything possible in order to obtain more power. And power is expansive and all-consuming, okay? Meaning they cannot stop but try to obtain more power. They behave in a certain way that looks as though they are possessed by demons. Okay? And in fact, they do worship demons. And the reason why is they think they worship all gods in a search for reason. Okay? They are looking for the greatest secrets of the universe, so they are open-minded. They are looking for all possibilities. They'll worship Lucifer, but they'll also worship Baphomet. They'll worship Osiris. They'll worship Isis. Okay? So now we understand how the world works literally. Throughout history, the elites have behaved the same way. Okay? And even though these elites are fighting with each other, they are moving forward an agenda that consolidates power onto the hands of a few people, which gives the impression that this is all a continuous agenda controlled by a few people. Okay? Does it all make sense, guys? All right? So remember, this is the metaphorical understanding of how the world works. A world controlled by a particular secret society. The Knights Templars, who became the Freemasons, who then became the Illuminati, who control the world today, and they're trying to usher in a one world government, an anti-surveillance state, and summon demons into this world in order to live forever, okay? So this is a grand conspiracy. But again, it doesn't explain why we have no evidence, why the elite don't think they're part of this, and why this is anti-historical, okay? But once we transform this into a literal explanation, and this is a literal explanation, this explains everything. Okay? The elite don't think this is conspiracy because they're too busy fighting each other. They're not looking at the grand scheme of things. Whereas the people who are not involved in this game can look at the movement history and can come to an intuitive understanding of how this thing moves. And it's moving towards more control, more order, and more power. Okay? And this helps us explain why the system persists even though the elites will rise and they will fall. Because these elites are already in competition with each other, so what's happening is that certain elites are replacing other elites, but they all have the same agenda, which is more power, more order, more control. Okay, does it make sense, guys? Okay, and that's why we actually read the texts of these secret societies, of these thinkers. They look as though they are building on top of each other, even though they probably have not read each other, okay? People who seek power are very much alike. They're different from you and me in that they're probably psychopaths, okay? All they care about is power, and so powerful people come together in order to create more power for themselves. Okay, does it make sense, guys? Okay.
The professor's conclusion is a stark warning for where we are heading. Throughout history, whenever the ruling elite wanted to completely control a chaotic population, they tried to turn society into a rigid, predictable machine. Millennia ago, they used rituals and empires. Today, they are using artificial intelligence and mass data tracking. This is what the 1,000-year plot looks like when it hits its final move. A world where human individuality is treated as a flaw and a hyper-controlled, algorithmic state is offered to us as the only solution for peace and safety. We are actively watching the board reset in real time. But I want to hear from you. Do you agree with Professor Jiang that the elite are sleepwalking us into an inescapable AI surveillance state? Or is the system bound to collapse under its own arrogance? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Make sure to like and subscribe to stay ahead of the Matrix, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.